What would you put in your backpack if you had a new coaching engagement but could only take a limited number of items? Each episode, the Coach's Backpack looks at the multifaceted world of coaching and asks a new guest to tell us what they would take with them and why. Hi, I'm David Lowe, and this week we're taking a peek inside the backpack of Daniel Susser, Team Intelligence Coach. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
So the first question, Daniel, is how would you describe what you do in under 20 words?
I've been thinking about how to compress this down. I help teams of mostly software developers collaborate on their goals. I think about cognitive science and intelligent teams.
How many words was that?
I've lost count.
I didn't count either.
I listened to an episode with you and Jon Inge, and where you offered to fine him if he went over the 20 words. So I was really didn't want to do that. I can't afford.
Right. Okay. Well, no, but I said in 20 words and it was 19. So you've got to give me a press up, just one press up. Okay. Yeah. We just pretend you did it because it's a podcast. Right. Well, you know the setup, but in case we have a new listener, you've been asked to coach a new client, but are limited to what you can take with you. So don't worry, you've got your essentials, you've got your clothes, your toothbrush, and in addition, you can take one book, one tool, technique, concept, method, or approach, another item of your choice, and a person from the past or the present to accompany you. So in whichever order you wish, Daniel, what are you taking with you and why?
So as my tool framework thing, I'm going to take a concept that I'm working on, which is intelligent teams. One day it will be a book, possibly called Intelligent Teams, in which case I will take that with me, but it hasn't been written yet. So it's at the moment in the world of theory. What Intelligent Teams is about is trying to understand our team systems with an intelligence lens on it. So my positing is that a team is a kind of mind, and what happens if we use the tools of analysis for mind and intelligence with our teams. So in the world of cognitive science, we view minds and intelligence as agents that are trying to navigate a complex world. The world is changing. It's got infinite interactions that are really hard to predict. So intelligence is the quality that we have that allows us to problem solve in a world like that. And the more I learn about cognitive science, the more I think, well, that's also true of our teams, right? We're trying to get something done, or our organizations are trying to get something done in a dynamic and changing world in which it's very hard to predict how things are going to go and how things are going to reorganize themselves to allow us paths of action. Cognitive science is making really interesting inroads into how to think about minds from an individual level. Well, let's try and think about it from a team level as well. And that's the basic hypothesis of it. There's all these interesting tools of analysis and paradigms that the source of lively debate in the world of cognitive science. I want to bring that into our team world so that we have those tools, we have those conversations, and we have those frameworks. I don't mean concrete frameworks like Grow or something like that. I mean more models or paradigms in our mind of how to think about our teams so that we can help them improve.
Okay. I'm having a growing sense of regret for agreeing to record this at 9 a.m. because I already feel like I'm starting to lose the complexity of what you're talking about. So I'm going to be asking really stupid questions throughout this.
Please.
But I'm going to disguise, obviously I'm going to edit this out, Daniel. I'm going to disguise it as if I'm pretending that I don't know so that the listeners can understand what you're saying, yeah? So this will be a perfect disguise. Yeah.
Pretend away. Yeah, stupid questions about intelligence is that should be a good post.
Well, and if you name the book that, I want at least a credit in the acknowledgements.
Done.
Okay, so let me play back what I've heard or not heard, just for the benefit of the listeners. Okay, so when you mentioned team as agent, immediately Star Trek, the Borg, and Hive Mind came into mind. Am I anywhere near the mark?
I've thought about that before. That it's actually a really good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, woo! I'm not as stupid as I thought.
When I say agent, I'm saying something that wants to solve a problem for one reason or another. So that could be like one cell trying to survive and trying to exist in your brain or in your body somewhere and having to solve that. That's a kind of agent, right? It has a kind of intelligence. It knows how to bring resources from the environment. It knows how to move maybe, or how to play its part in the ecosystem to stop itself being destroyed. And it carries out that function. An agent could be an individual organism, so a bacterium or a human or a bird or a moth, trying to survive and reproduce and do all those biological things. Or an agent could be like a swarm or a hive or something like that. And if we look at a beehive or the Borg or a swarm of locusts, they are similarly like together in this complex adaptive system, trying to find food and find places to nest or to reproduce or whatever. And one of the theories or the positions that I really like from the world of cognitive science is something called society of mind by Marvin Minsky, which is this idea that even in our own minds, our own consciousness is made up of lots of different smaller agents, each with their own agendas and each with their own preferences, and sort of wrestling for control of the mouth or the actions, which explains somehow like how I can have slips of the tongue or how I can let my socially inept part spill out more frequently than I would like. And there's not like one central controlling part of my mind that is like in charge that everything else is running towards. So our minds are a kind of hive mind already, at my own individual brain level, and follow certain patterns. And I'm not going to say rules, but there are certain facets of this intelligence. And one of the ways that I'm thinking about it at the moment, and I'm in the process of developing these ideas, so it's a joy to be able to come on and explore them with another human, is you can have a paramecium, which is a sort of single cell organism that with very, very simple algorithm can turn left or right away from poison and turn left or right or go forward towards food. Okay, so it's avoid poison, go towards food. And it can survive and it can reproduce and it can do all the things that a paramecium needs to do. I would argue that's a kind of intelligence. It's the right sized intelligence for the problems that paramecium faces. That paramecium is not more intelligence if it knows Plato or if it can do maths. It's well fitted for its niche, for its environment to survive and to carry out its sort of evolutionary goals, if you can call them that. Similarly, we as humans, we've evolved this intelligence, and the type of intelligence that we have, the abstract problem solving, the language, the social cognition stuff, our ability to work in groups, we've evolved that because it's helped us survive and it's helped us solve the kind of problems that we need to solve to survive in this crazy complex world out there. And intelligence is not a fixed quality that can be tested with an IQ test or something like that, or the better you are at maths or the more words you know, the more intelligent you are. Intelligence is more a kind of dynamic fittedness with the problem space that you're in. So when I think about a team, and I really got into this idea by thinking about people talking about high performing teams. I want my team to be a high performing team. We say, well, how do you know if it's a high performing team? You go, well, I guess they've got psychological safety and I guess they get stuff done, and maybe they use some sort of framework. I don't know, they're agile or they're lean or they're doing something like that. But some of the elements of that argument start to fall down when we think about how different teams are from each other, right? One high performing team solving one kind of problem may look very different from another kind of high performing team solving another kind of problem. So what they have in common is a sort of fittedness with their environment. And I'd argue it's a kind of intelligence. So the team at Toyota that used Kanban and was really good at producing high quality, fast flow cars and car parts, they had a very different kind of problem to solve from a high performing multidisciplinary medical team who are saving someone's life, or a software team who are uncovering user requirements and building small apps and releases in the cloud or whatever. And lots of the fundamental mechanics of how those teams work with each other will be different from Toyota to the medical team to the software team. And yeah, we talk about them as if they have so many things in common with each other. That all high performing teams have the following qualities. Let's look at that. With this team intelligence idea, I'm trying to help teams understand what are the features of the problem space that you're operating in, and how do you, as a kind of mind organism intelligence, how do you fit well into that? And if you can do that well, you are intelligent and you'll be high performing and you'll achieve your goals well. And if you don't, especially if you're copying someone else's view of high performance, that's consisting of a high performing team made up of different people solving a different problem in a different context, well, then you're unlikely to, or you'll be very lucky if you find a good fittedness between that team and the problem that they're facing.
Which is a common approach, right? People say, "Oh, it's worked over there. We're going to do it here," and then it doesn't work, and then they're all surprised, and then, "Oh, this approach is rubbish," and etc. etc.
Or this team are rubbish, right? If only they were more adaptable or more open-minded or more whatever. And I often think of an example of when I worked somewhere where one of our other team delivery managers asked their team to do emotional logs or something. I think they'd seen it on a blog, or they had, I don't know, they'd been to some conference where it was, here's why you should asking your team to keep a diary of their emotions be helpful. And there are some teams that would absolutely love that. And the team that this delivery manager was working with did not like that. They were like very technical, straightforward people doing sort of deep techie things. And they were like, what on earth is this stuff? And I think that delivery manager lost a lot of her credibility with the team and like missed an opportunity to find something that actually worked for how the team could express themselves. And there are ways of doing it. I'm not against people taking tools or things they've tried or things they've seen from one element and cross-pollinating it. That is a really normal and useful thing to do. But it's about recognizing that our teams are fundamentally different in really important ways that we don't necessarily understand, that they don't understand, and dealing with a problem space that is probably different from other problem spaces we've seen, and therefore holding these things very, very lightly. If I want to cross-pollinate an idea, there are ways of doing it that make it more wisely applied, and there are ways of doing it that are more brute force and more risky.
We could spend the whole session talking about this, but I've got a couple of questions. First of all, is Minsky the foundation for the film Inside Out? You've seen the film?
I've seen the film. It's a brilliant film. And the idea that our psyche contains different elements that drive different kinds of behavior and thoughts goes back to Plato and probably before. Plato had this idea of our psyche being made up of the man, who is the sort of rational, higher order intelligence creature that does all the self-controlled type of things and has values and does the right thing. And the lion is the social element that worries about other people and how we fit into society. And the beast is the part of us that eats the cake, even though we know that we shouldn't. And if you look at Jung or Freud or many, many other thinkers, they've sort of realized this. And it, even outside the world of cognitive science, in the world of therapy, there's a system called internal family systems therapy, which was developed by a guy called Richard Schwartz, which is about dealing with the parts of us that show up in different ways, and different parts have different thoughts and play different roles for us in our development. So it's not a new idea. It's more what Minsky did in Society of Mind is prove it from an AI point of view and say, instead of having like one controlling agent that is looking after lots of different functions and trying to put them all into one coherent algorithm or something like that, you could build these sort of architectures that consist of lots of parts all vying for trying to solve different problems themselves and all sort of wrestling control. And there's this idea of a pandemonium architecture, which I love. And Daniel Dennett talks about that. He's a cognitive science philosopher who died a couple of weeks ago. Talks about the pandemonium architecture of our minds, of all these different parts in a sort of self-organizing chaos, finding ways to take control over the one mouth that we have or the one body that we have in ways that hopefully are adaptive. So whenever you have lots of thinkers all from different fields converging on a similar set of ideas, and I include, of course, the writers and animators of Inside Out as some of the greatest philosophers of our time, you're onto something there. And as a team coach, I look at that and think, well, our team is obviously a kind of mind like that. And what are they wrestling for? They are wrestling for control of the output that they're working on. So I work with a lot of software teams. So just like a human society of mind is given expression through speech and through the one mouth, maybe my software team is given expression through the code release or through the choices it makes about what to work on or something like that. And there'll be inherent trade-offs in that internal thinking, and some ideas will be squashed and some will be promoted, and sometimes it will be the right thing and sometimes it will be the wrong thing. But when we start seeing your team as a kind of mind that needs to be collaborating together and intention and all just wrestling for control of this action that it gets to express itself with in the world, that just opens up all sorts of paths of thinking. It becomes less about how do I have individual performers who can know the right information, and it starts turning more into how can I make this mind work better.
And in personal coaching, we have cast of characters, right? That's that kind of who's on your bus or whatever metaphor you want to use. But if we think, then we've got a number of buses going around in our team, and we've got a lot of characters on there. I still think Minsky stole it from Inside Out, but there we go. And Plato probably saw the film as well. I don't know
I
whether
think
they
he
had
read an early script. Yeah.
Probably. Okay, look, we're going to have to move on because we're at risk of spending the whole time just on your approach, which people can't even find out more about because you haven't written the book yet.
They can find out more about it. I am writing a Substack. It's called agileonthemind.substack.com. And they can see these ideas as they emerge. But for now, this is the first public outing of me talking about them to someone else.
Although we are recording this, and I am well known to be quite slow at getting the series out. So by the time this goes out, it could well be that you are a best-selling New York Times author. So we'll see.
If you want to find out more about this, go to your local Waterstones and check the bestsellers section.
Yeah. Yes. If there's still a Waterstones in 2028. Okay. Right. So that was your approach. Yeah, that wasn't your book. You're not taking your future book. You're taking that as an approach, right?
Can I take my book? Can I take my future book? And then this is so self-indulgent, but
That seems a waste though, because you've already taken the concept with you. What are you going to benefit? What are you going to gain by taking the book?
Maybe as the concept, I want to take one of the frameworks from the work. Like
Okay.
I'm starting to tease out from this what is quite sort of theoretical and abstract stuff. Or as someone working in a team, how can I use some of these concepts to be helpful and to help my teams
Okay.
improve? Is
So
it
you're
allowed
taking the
that way
book.
around?
Remind me the working title of the book.
Intelligent teams.
Intelligent Teams. Have you looked if anyone else has called a book Intelligent Teams?
I have. They haven't.
Good. And it will be safe on here because it will be published by the time this goes out.
Yeah.
So you're taking Intelligent Teams by Dr. Daniel Susser, as you'll be by then as well, if not Professor or Sir. And then for your approach, you're taking all of the things in the book?
I'm actually aiming for Duke.
Okay.
Yeah. Then as the approach, I would take a handful of the tools that are in development from this. So the one that I'm most enjoying at the moment, I'm calling it Goldilocks scales, but I'm very open to having a better title for this. And the idea is like this. It takes on an idea called opponent processing theory, which is something that came from the world of vision and color, which is that our perception of color in the world is the result of opponent color processing systems trading off against each other and finding a kind of balance that results in the phenomenon of color. So blue trades off against green, and that gives us something like maybe purple. And they're each pulling towards their thing. The blue cones are only firing blue and the red are only firing red. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering this as well, but being wrong on the internet is actually an adaptive trait because then people can come and correct you and make a lot of fuss in the meantime. So opponent processing is, and I'm borrowing this from a cognitive scientist called John Vervaeke. Opponent processing is at play in our cognition in lots of ways. So, for example, in our nervous system, we have sort of two opposing nervous systems that trade off against each other, and that is our sympathetic and our parasympathetic. Right? Sympathetic is our fight and flight response, the one that gets activated, the one that's on the lookout for danger, the one that controls having a high heart rate and lots of adrenaline and blood pumping everywhere. And then you have your rest and digest system, which is about relaxing and digesting your food and not being activated all the time. And they are, in a way, two very separate systems mediated by this thing called the vagus nerve, which touches lots of different organs and basically senses, should I be alert right now, in which case all systems go, or can I relax now, in which case all systems relax. When the vagus nerve switches on, it puts on your rest and digest response. And there's no correct answer for like which of these should be active at the right now. It depends on the situation, right? If there's a tiger in front of me, I should hope that I have my fight and flight system on because I need it. If I'm at the campfire and everything's chill and I'm safe and I still have my fight and flight response on, well, that's very costly and I'm going to start making decisions that aren't in my benefit. So these two sort of opponent processing nervous systems will trade off against each other. And hopefully, if you've got a well-adapted system, will find the right balance given the context. And that's the idea of opponent processing. You put two heuristics, two rules of thumb, two decision-making ideas into opposition with each other and find the right balance between them. And there's other ways in which we do this in our cognition. Another example is explore, exploit. So on the one hand, you have a tendency, and this, we're not talking about like a part of the brain that's the explore thing. We're talking about collections of physiological systems and cognitive architectures and lots of different things that create a pattern called exploration. Exploration is about, let's go find more resources, let's go find more ideas, let's go explore new lands and territories and new. And then you have exploit, which is I have the resources I need. What I need to do is access them or benefit from them or use them. So the opponent processing scales or Goldilocks scales is the idea of when your team faces some sort of dilemma or some sort of dysfunction, asking them to try and articulate it in terms of the opposing legitimate forces that are at play with the team there. So often we come to a team with a dysfunction and we go, something's gone wrong, right? Someone's doing something wrong or something messy in the system. Let's just like go and fix it. And we don't think about, well, why did that dysfunction come about? Like what was, this dysfunction was an answer to something. Right? It may not be a very good answer. It might be an answer with bad side effects. But if you have a team that are, not talking to each other and everyone's annoyed and mumbling under their breath about how their manager is getting on their nerves, well, that is an answer to the problem of how do I stay safe in this team? Or it's an answer to the problem of how do I keep my job? It's not a good answer to how do I collaborate well with my colleagues? But those things are in trade-offs. So in a team like that, there's one legitimate pole that is saying, stay safe, keep your job, don't put your head above the parapet, don't upset anyone. People don't like to be upset. Keep the peace, even if it's quite an unpleasant peace. And there's another pole, which is collaborate, share ideas, have conflict with each other, be willing to be wrong or to share something uncomfortable with someone. Those are both legitimate extremes. That team has found a sort of dysfunctional balance between them, given the context that they have. So in this model, in Goldilocks scales, you are trying to find the just right for the situation, right? Goldilocks goes into the house and the bed that's too hard and the bed that's too soft and the bed that's just right, or the porridge that's too hot or the porridge that's too cold, porridge that's just right. And for each of our teams, if they have a dysfunction, it's asking them what are the legitimate opposing poles here. And an example that I think of is we have too many meetings, right? We're spending all our time in meetings and we never get to get anything done. Giving everyone enough time to do focused individual work, that's a team level valuable extreme that they could be orienting towards, right? We want people to have enough time to do the individual work that they need to do. Mm-hmm. Legit. On the other hand, then there's the other thing, which is we need to share ideas. We need to keep each other on the right track. We need to help each other out. We need to collaborate on the things that need to be collaborated on. Or that's one way of seeing it. Enough time for collaboration, enough time for focused work. And if we can help the team articulate their dysfunction in terms of those two things, then it's no longer, this annoying thing that someone is foisting on us. We just go, someone is over optimizing for something and they're doing it, for the right reasons, and they're doing it, with the best outcomes for the team and the organization in their heart. But I think you are over optimizing for one of these poles, and we need to tune in a different way. We need to rebalance, and that creates a much more depersonalized way of having that conversation. It's not, Alan, stop making us have all your stupid meetings. It's, Alan, you think that we need to be collaborating, I think, more than we do. We're actually missing out on the flip side of that, which is focused work. Can we find a way to give ourselves a bit more focus? And that's a lot easier way of getting Alan on board. And it's a lot easier way of helping the team articulate what they need, because they're not attacking Alan, they're attacking Alan's preference on the scale.
Right, yeah. We should probably move on, because we've so far got your book, available in all good bookstores, the Goldilocks scales. You've got left to choose another item to take with you of any type, which will probably, on the basis of what you've picked so far, probably be a signed photo of yourself, and then a person to take with you, which will probably be your younger self. I don't know. So tell me, what else are you taking?
A cardboard cutout of my own face. For this one, I was thinking of taking the jelly person tree or the blob tree. This is not something that I came up with. This is a tool from, I think it's from the world of family therapy, and it's a picture of a tree with lots of blob people in different scenarios on the tree. And some of them are dangling off by one hand, some of them are standing triumphantly on the top, some of them are helping each other, some of them are laid out face down on the floor. And it's a brilliant tool for asking teams to create their own narrative of where they're up to or how things are for them. Because you're not saying one of these is the best. You use that at the beginning of a meeting or in a retrospective or whenever you need to get a sense check of what's happening for your team, you say, which one of these blob people is most like you right now? Or which one of these blob people do you think is most like our team right now? And you listen to their answers. And that tells you something about how they're seeing themselves. So I prefer that to 0 to 10 check-in type things where 10 is kind of the right answer. So that skews the scale in sorts of weird ways. If I say, how are you feeling on a scale of like 10, super happy and delighted to be here and fully resourced, to 0, which is like completely depleted,
Mm.
maybe as the person inviting that, I'm happy to hear a 0. I want to hear a 0. But for the team member, they may think, I can't give a 0. That would look bad for Daniel. Maybe his managers will have a go at him, or maybe I'll get in trouble for that. Or I've been in trouble in the past for speaking my mind. So why would I do that here? And they may do the same thing. Maybe they think the jelly person, the blob person on the floor, laid out, looking really miserable, is the wrong answer. But I think it's easier to tease that stuff out of teams in a psychologically safe way, and it has a cognitive science angle to it because it allows them to tell a story. And the cognitive science of stories, of metaphor, is rich and interesting. Stories and symbols are ways that we can incorporate a lot of data, a lot of information very easily and transmit it to each other. So when I say I am the blob person standing on top of the tree triumphantly, you get a lot of data about how I might be feeling or how I might be seeing myself. And that is why I would take the blob tree.
Mm. Well, we're very good at telling stories, right? I mean, that's the thing about us. So I love the blob tree. Ian Long and Pip Wilson apparently in the 80s devised it to help
Good memory.
people who were struggling to express themselves. I'm a big fan of Lego Serious Play. Not used it enough, but again, that's that kind of I'm building this thing to represent how I'm feeling about this thing or how I view this thing, because scales are all great. I mean, I use a scale every so often. How happy are you, you might say, or how confident are you that this is going to work, just to get some kind of conversation going. But things are more nuanced than a 0 to 10 scale, right? Or a traffic light system.
Mm.
It frustrates me when teams are asked to say, are you a green, orange, or red on this thing? Well, let's take communication. Some of us communicate really well. We may not communicate with our stakeholders very well, but we communicate quite well with our customers. Well, what color are you? Kind of muddy brown?
Yeah.
That's not nuanced enough, is it? So,
Yeah, I was feeling psychologically safe yesterday, but then this morning, my
yeah.
wife and I had an argument, and now I'm feeling a bit angry and not very psychologically safe. Am I an amber? Does that go on the
Mm,
team records now? Is our team is an amber?
mm.
And in intelligent, in sort of wise organizations, they know that these things are hold them with a very light touch. But I've been in organizations where like the aggregation of the team health checks are not held with a light touch or not perceived to be. And that just drives all sorts of weird, unexpected and unintended behaviors from the coaches, from the team members. The more we can avoid that and the more we can make it about narratives, the better.
Okay, and so who are you taking with you? And as I always say, they don't have to go in your backpack. They can trundle along with you, and maybe even carry your backpack.
Socrates.
Yeah. Do you want to
Socrates.
elaborate at all on that, or should we just move on? I mean, we probably should
So,
just move on. Just go. Yeah, Socrates.
next question, please. No,
Yeah.
Socrates had a style of asking questions to try and get to the bottom of something. He would pick holes in people's arguments and say, what about this? And what about that? And what about that? And he would drive people insane. But in the process, he would discover stuff or help them discover things themselves. And he was put to death by being too annoying. And I often think that I might be the most annoying person in the room. So if I had Socrates with me, I think at least there'd be some healthy competition there. And there's something in the Socratic style of understanding that we're in this very hard to navigate world where answers have holes in and everything is Works some of the time, most of the time. There's always an opposition, there's always a dialectic, there's always a hole in your argument. And Socrates seems to have understood that. And that's what made him wise. So knowing that he couldn't know all the answers, knowing that there was more depth to it, knowing that there was always a way of picking apart his assumptions. And I think that's just a really helpful starting point if we're helping our teams trying to navigate their situations. And that comes back to this trade-off idea that there's not like one correct answer. There's our best tuning, our best attempt to find the right balance in very difficult to navigate world. So we just have to find our best answer, knowing that there's other ones out there. And we should be pushing at those edges as well sometimes. I think Socrates would have been super helpful. I don't think he spoke English, so we would have to, but he seemed like a bright guy, so he could probably pick it up.
I totally get why you choose Socrates. And I'm not here to attack Socrates, right? I know he's got quite a significant place in history. How long are you imagining this gig, this fictional gig, to be?
Ideally, not long enough that they put me or Socrates to death. It's a good question. I think it will be on the longer engagement side of things, because when you're working with someone for a short amount of time, there's a limit to how much you can maybe push or explore and what you're bringing in, what you're brought
Give me
in
a
to do.
ballpark figure, Daniel. Ballpark figure for how long?
6 months.
Okay. I'm thinking about how long it would take until Socrates starts to piss you off. Do you not think he'd start to get on your nerves after a little while?
Probably. I'm going to give a completely like disingenuous answer and say, that would be a brilliant opportunity for me to do some deep personal work as well, to
Okay.
see what Socrates annoying me brought up in me that I could then use as an opportunity to grow and improve. And that's definitely what would happen.
Okay. So you want to stick with the blob tree and Socrates. Are you sure you don't want to swap your blob tree for some hemlock just in case he just gets too much? And then when you're in your Premier Inn and you make a cup of tea, you can just slip a little bit in to his cuppa.
Okay,
No?
fine. Blob tree because it's so nice at helping people express themselves, and hemlock in case I need to murder Socrates.
I'm not going to promote murder. So, Intelligent Teams, your book, Goldilocks Scales, along with maybe the book to explain what the three bears and Goldilocks are. Blobtree and Socrates are all going along with you. Now, sometimes you may have some help packing your bag before your trip and unknowingly put things in there that you don't want to be in there. So, what is the one thing that you would not want to take with you?
Distractions. So I don't mind having a difficult conversation. In fact, I enjoy it, getting into the weeds of something. But when I know that I'm talking to people where there isn't the full focus on what we're doing, or when I'm distracted, that sucks all the energy out of everything. And all this stuff that we've been talking about today it's hard. It requires your attention. It requires your engagement, your life force. And if you're being dragged in lots of different directions and you can only give half a mind towards one thing, well, sometimes that's just the situation you're dealt. But if I can avoid someone packing it so that my fictional coaching engagement is a fully focused one, then that would be my strong preference.
Okay, honesty time here, Daniel. What is the one distraction that you've got that you actually really like, but you know you shouldn't be distracted by it?
It's probably Facebook reels of skateboarding competitions. I
Fair
just can't
enough.
stop watching people do those nollie 360 kickflips.
Okay. And the final question is, where do you hope you are or are not going on this fictional gig?
I hope I am not going somewhere where they have a very fixed idea of what I'm going to do with or for them. Because I see our workers being a kind of organizational team therapist, and you're there to help them explore their reality and move towards the kind of life work that they want for themselves, and to bring their unconscious into their consciousness, to bring their unconscious into their consciousness. So if you're dealing with people that have a very fixed idea about what they want, well, they don't know what they actually want, or they don't necessarily know what will be the best way of achieving the outcome that they want. So that fixedness really gets in the way, and it creates all sorts of friction. Now, once you're in those kind of engagements, we have our tools and we have our ways of playing back to them in a sort of Socratic way, um, well, if you want this, then I can do that. But isn't that going to produce X, or aren't you worried about Y, or have you noticed how much Z happens? And that maybe sort of unpicks the edifice of that fixedness. But I much prefer going into engagements where there is that openness to learning something about themselves and not just getting a plug and play service.
Oh, so many questions I wanted to ask that I've not had the chance. What would Socrates wear if he was in the modern day? What do you reckon?
Toga, right? I think Socrates had an independent streak and therefore would probably just want to hang on to his toga.
But if he's doing togas weren't they Roman?
Oh, in which case, were they not Greek?
I don't know. I think they...
Togas, because Socrates was a very forward-thinking guy and he would have adapted the Roman culture, and that is definitely what would have happened. Yeah.
Do you not think he'd wear like a T-shirt with a slogan on it? Probably one of his sayings.
So not a toga, but a slogan.
Okay. And on that note, Daniel Susser, I've got to say thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure and a bit of a mind fuck.
Thanks.
I meant that in a nice way.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a hell of a way to start a 9 o'clock morning with Paramecium.
Paramecium and
not the Euro Paramecium, with the discussion about Paramecium. Oh, it was going so well until the end.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us on this episode of The Coach's Backpack. If you would like extra goodies such as free tools, offers, further info about our guests, and maybe even the odd peek inside their actual backpack, sign up for our mailing list at thecoachesbackpack.com. And don't forget to follow the podcast too. See you next time.